All right, we're on once again with another episode of Real Talk. It's so great to be back with all the Wicked Tuna fans. Watch the episodes again. They're all available now on the Wicked Tuna channel on YouTube. Great way to reconnect with the show or connect with it for the first time. It's great to get to meet these characters, relive all of their crazy experiences, and then talk about them and get to feel how they were in those moments and what they were feeling. And now feeling it again for a second time, going back and rewatching this stuff for the first time in over a decade. So happy to be back again with Jay and Dave. Hi, how are you guys? You're vacationing. Thank you for coming in from from your Caribbean vacation. It's beautiful shirt. It doesn't at all clash with what you're wearing underneath.
He likes to plan his vacations around fishing.
Is that true?
No.
Don't you want to get away from fishing?
No.
The more the better.
My wife Nancy likes to fish. She's the one who got me this shirt. So.
That's nice. You're still with her even after she got you that shirt. That's really nice.
That's right. That's right. Look, I owe her. She put up with me all these years of fishing. So, we've been married 36 years now. So, look, she was there for all the lean time. So, I'm glad she hung around for when it got a little good.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about her in this conversation today. This episode focuses on the bad weather. It's really the first time we see you guys in a storm, in bad weather. And you're the first guy who's like, I'm going out. I don't care. I need the money. I need the cash. I don't have any reserves. This is a thin line here, right? It's a very fine line between having success and not. So you make that decision. Hey, I'm going out in the storm.
And that's usually the best time to go out is during a storm. There's less people. The fish seem to be a little bit more bitey. And for some reason, when the wind blows, we can usually get a bite.
Yeah. How much worse is it for the people actually doing the work?
It's harder. It sucks when you put your coffee down and it spills, right? You know what I mean? Those days I get frustrated. Now, look, that being said, too, when I say we're going out in the storm, I've looked at all the weather maps. I've made my own weather prediction based on my knowledge of what I can find online, just like everybody else, and what I experience in this area. I'm not going out there willy-nilly and ignoring Mother Nature, right? And as a fisherman, you'd be crazy to do that. It'd be a great way to get killed. I'm basing my decision to fish on, okay, we got bad weather coming down, but okay, it's going to be manageable. I know the limits of my boat and, more importantly, my crew.
Yeah.
All right. You'd be crazy to ignore all those factors, right? And, when I make a call to fish hard weather, it's because, number one, I think it's going to be a good opportunity. And yes, number two is necessity because, again, for me, there isn't another stream of income coming off. You can go back the 36 years I've been married, right? And 95% of a combined household income came from the boat, or me fishing on somebody else's boat. That's it.
I would think that could lead to bad decisions, though, right? When you need the money.
There's a fine line between working hard and, get yourself killed. All right? And I like to think I walk that line. I don't go out in any storm. I don't go out in any weather. Again, I know I go out based on the knowledge of the weather event that's going to happen and my assessment of that event and knowing the abilities of my boat and my crew. And if I think those abilities are going to be exceeded, I won't go. And, there's been times where myself and the forecast has been wrong. And, we got out there and weather came down on a multi-day trip that was much, worse than expected. And that's how you learn the capabilities of your boat and your crew. I had to hide merchandise out in weather, not intentionally, unexpectedly. We spent some overnights out there and, during the night, a 70-foot boat sank and a 50-foot boat sank. And hard merch is 34 feet and we made it through just fine. So I know the capabilities of that boat.
As a member of the crew, it's a lot of trust you got to put in the captain because you're the one who's got to go out there with him without making that call.
Yeah, but if I sit home, I'm not going to make no money, so I know when he makes a decision, it's for the benefit of both of us.
Is it helpful being family in that like, hey, he's not going to put a family member at risk?
No, we're family on shore. Yeah, we're family on the boat, but we're employees when we get on the boat. We got the same mindset. We got to go out there and make some money.
But you've come with me on many different boats.
Yep.
Again, tuna season is 4 months. Tuna season is a portion of the year. I've run boats out of New Bedford. And Jay, I've told those guys if I run a boat, I want to bring at least one of my own crew members on a team with multiple crew people. And, I bring Jay along because as me as a captain, it's good to have a dependable crew. And again, I don't think Jay would come on all those different boats if he didn't have a modest amount of confidence in the decisions I would make.
One of the things we don't get to see in this, because we see the wind, we see the rain, we see the waves. We don't really get to see the temperature through the television. How cold is it in addition to everything else going on with the elements?
It depends on the time of year, but
this was November.
Yeah. Once it gets past September, things start getting pretty cold around here, With the nor'easters happening, that's what you just saw. We were in a nor'easter. There was a little bit of snow. We've caught these tuna in 20-degree weather out there. And then we also caught them in 100-degree weather. You just so up and down everywhere.
When you're in the cold weather, I think of a baseball player trying to grip a ball and throw it in cold weather. It's a lot harder to do than throwing it in warm weather. You got to grip one of these rods.
Jay and I, in our career as a commercial fisherman, right? There's a saying on a boat: if you're cold,
you got to go fast.
Stop standing around and start doing your job. And look, because again, we fished all winter doing other fisheries, not just tuna, gill netting, long lining, dragging. And again, if you're cold, it's because you're standing around. It's like jogging in the cold, right? If you dress up and prepare for the cold and you go for a jog, you're going to be fine. But if you go out with those same jogging clothes and just kind of stand around and do nothing, could freeze your ass.
That doesn't help your hands, though, right? I mean, your hands.
Well, no, your hands are your hands. And look, you got to look at it like this. After you get by the pain, then you're good for the day. The worst thing you can do is just let your hands warm up, right? So you just got to kind of suck it up and let the pain, let the cold, embrace the pain.
There's a saying.
It only hurts for a while, but once you make it by that pain and that cold, your hands will be fine the rest of the day. Just don't warm them up.
There's a saying, pain is temporary, but pride is forever.
There you go.
There's a lot of sayings on a boat, huh?
Yeah, I guess.
You guys have a lot of sayings. You kind of got a saying for everything.
A lot of one-liners.
No wonder you ended up on a TV show. It was almost meant to be. Fishing in rough weather, though, also seems like it's kind of fun, right? I mean, like they're just kind of throwing more at you, and there seem to be a lot more biting.
Well, look.
It's never fun.
It has its thrills. And tuna fishing, ultimately, out of all the fisheries we do, it's exciting. You're catching what could be a 10-foot fish on a rod and a reel, right? And by law, that's the only way we can catch these fish. So that's what we do to catch them. So we're not using nets. We're not using the hydraulics. We're not using long lines. It's all, and again, I think that was one of the things why people tune into a fishing show. Because at some level, the fish has got a chance, right? It's not me setting a big net around the fish and scooping them up, right? It's catching them one at a time with a rod and reel. So I'm sure there's those people out there who don't root for any of us, but are just rooting for the fish, right? And that's fine. I think that's what makes it fun. And when you add in some rough weather, you get some cool camera shots, you get some water flying around, and it makes for excitement. And let's face it, we're not, operating in a vacuum here. If it's exciting for us, we know that's going to translate into excitement for the audience.
So one of the things here in this episode is you're also having engine issues, though, in the middle of the storm.
That's just us.
How much does that compound the problem or compound the danger?
With everything moving around and getting wet and stuff. The boat wasn't at its 100%.
Adapt and overcome. Yeah. We'll get it down. We've had a breakdown before.
A lot of duct tape and FUs go a long way on that boat.
Blood, sweat, and swears.
What happens if you can't get that boat going? What happens if that engine what happens if the engine doesn't come back? What if you're MacGruber instead of MacGyver?
Hopefully you have a friend.
Well, that's why you got a set of fins for Jay down below, right? Hang him over the transom and tell him to kick his little digits there as quick as he can.
What happens?
But hopefully you have a friend out there, that can help you out. And if not, I guess you're going to be floating around for a while.
Does that affect the way or where you might fish, especially in rough weather? I know there are times where you want to get away from everybody else in the fleet and kind of do your own thing.
Sure.
In rough weather, does that change the
Absolutely. If bad weather's coming down, you'll speak with the boats out there, even if they're not your so-called friends, but they're boats in the area, you'll get some form of communication. And that's just like a safety net for their benefit as well as yours. Hey, where are you from? Oh, you're from New Hampshire? I'm from Gloucester. We're going to be spending the night out here tonight. Let's leave it on this channel just in case either one of us has problems, right? So that'll, again, fishermen as a whole, we look out for each other, right? There's a competitive side of the industry, but there's also that aspect that as an industry, in one sense, we're all brothers, right? And we're always going to have our brothers back. Even that brother that you've had an argument with, even that brother you dislike, when the chips are down, no man is getting left behind.
Have you ever been in a situation where you needed to help others in those moments?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah. But many times. The list is endless. Jay just recently
towed in your mentor.
The guy who was one of my mentors, Billy Brown. When I was a guy, he was the guy who showed me how to drive a boat. He was the guy I actually caught my first tuna with when I was a young man and a mate, right? So you're forever doing that. And, I've been on both ends of the tow rope. Someone's pulled me in the hard merch home, and, I've returned the favor and towed others home. And, now just this season, Jay, again, told it one of the oldest, saltiest dogs in this harbor, one of the guys who taught me. And Jay had to pull him home. It was his turn. And everybody gets a turn at the end of a tow rope.
And it wasn't a flat, calm day. There was some waves out there, and it was foggy. It was definitely a little learning curve.
What's the last resort? The Coast Guard?
Yes. Yeah.
And is there any, I don't want to say fear, but embarrassment of man, I really don't want to be the guy who has to call the Coast Guard?
What's great about the United States Coast Guard is we know they'll come hella high water, right? But at the same point, there's no need to ask them to risk their neck if it's not necessary. To me, a breakdown is a simple thing. It's not life-threatening. I'm going to find one of my buddies to get me home. There's no need for me to bother the Coast Guard, for a tow home, right? That's like an adult thing to do. Like, okay, we're going to figure it out. I got plenty of friends. I got a line of communication. Somebody's going to get this boat home. Now, a hurricane's coming down, and one of my buddies can't come get me in time to get me out of harm's way. Well, then all bets are off. You call the Coast Guard. So I think it's behooves us as an industry, to think about how well we can take care of ourselves. And the Coast Guard, the men and women of the Coast Guard, we don't need to be wasting their time for silly shit. And, that's why, too, you have all these services now, the Towboat US and and they're kind of the second backup. So again, we can save. United States Coast Guard's mission is life-saving. If we're not in dire straits, we don't need to bother them.
Can you rebuild your entire engine by yourself? Do you become a mechanic when you get this job?
No, I have my limits. I know my limits. I can't rebuild the engine myself. If the engine needs a rebuild, I'm gonna have professionals rebuild it.
But right? You can fix enough on that.
I can take it out. I can take things apart, great. Where I struggle with is put back together.
Yeah, everyone can take it out.
It's easy to take it out with a hammer.
No kidding. I know my limits.
You're good at the demo phase. It's the actual
I know my limits.
Part.
I know my limits.
When the boat sunk, we all know when the boat sunk. Do you remember where you were and where you left me?
No.
You were in Italy, and you left me to deal with the engine.
Oh, okay. Was that my Italy trip?
Yeah, that was your Italy trip. You went away 2 days later.
And you got the engine out of the boat?
Figure it out. And I said, huh?
How old
were you then?
Engine
out.
I was 22, 23.
Speaking of storms, you were almost on the Indra Gale, right?
Yeah.
You don't seem so You got that story.
Look, it was sheer happenstance. I knew that David Sullivan pretty well. Mm-hmm. He was a guy who'd sit in the bar stool at the Crow's Nest, right? And, back then there was no cell phone. So he was a guy, my wife, on her way home from the hair salon, would usually come grab me by the ear. And, because if they called the bar, we'd say to the bartender, Dave's not here, right? And, but she knew where I'd be hanging, right? Because we're going way back before we had kids. And I actually, hey, they're making one more trip for the year. Dave said they needed a guy. I said I was interested, just out of happenstance. That Bill Brown, the guy we mentioned, Jay towed home, right? I had worked for him, again, back in the day. I didn't own my own boat. I'm just a crewman. I bounce around the harbor, have boots will travel. That was a great gig to have if you had a good reputation for a crewman. Guys would always call you for the extra guys, to be the extra fill-in guy when fishing was real good. And then as soon as fishing slowed down, you were the first guy fired, right? So last guy hired, first guy fired. You only got on boats when it was time to make money. You needed to have a good reputation as a crewman for that. At the time, so I was faced with, I could have gone on that swordfish trip, which turned out to be that boat's last trip. Or I was offered a year-round site with Billy Brown. At the time, was one of the highline boats in the harbor. So it was work for one trip or take a year-round job. I took the year-round job without ever thinking about it until, of course, those guys never came home, right? And then it was, and now I look back on it, and it's surprising, how many people's lives can be changed by one decision. Because, like I said, I think we were newly married then. We hadn't had any kids yet. So had I taken that trip, not only would I not be here, because the outcome wouldn't have been any different, but so would my 3 kids not be here.
Can you watch that movie, read that book, or do you just
I watch it, and you know what I mean? It's none of us knows, nobody knows what really happened, right? Because nobody's around to tell the story. So I think it's a reasonable assertion of what probably, could have happened. Again, because I can see just like, the little parts of the story where they pushed further to go get fish. Okay, Jay would do that. If I said Jay, I think he'd go the distance if we had a talk, right? And, because captains will, we don't, at least a good captain doesn't operate like a god. Crew input is important. You have to have your team behind you. And, the idea to, stay out or go, the idea to come home or have fish spoil and get less price, by staying out till the storm goes by. They were past the storm. And once it's like, all that speculation, but I think it could be a reasonable scenario on how it played out.
Near the end of the episode, your wife, Nancy, comes to meet you guys at the dock. Is that normal? Is that after a storm? How often would she come be there?
She likes to be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Auntie Nancy, she likes to be there. She likes fishing. She likes to see us. And usually when we bring home a fish, she usually shows up with a little Chinese food too.
Oh, there we go.
Right. Yeah, sometimes she would come down when she could. Mm-hmm. Again, but at some point the novelty wears off, I mean, she used to make me a lunch every morning and my brown bag and a lunch and but then kids happened and all of a sudden there was, no lunch in the fridge for the captain anymore. But look, as long as the kids had their lunches, that was my job to make sure, she had the money to make the kids a good lunch. And I was okay with that. And, I'd have my bologna and cheese on the boat that I made.
We had the Chef Boyardee heated up on the block.
Oh, yeah. That was always a good one too, though, Jay.
She's not pacing back and forth on a widow's walk waiting for you guys to make it home.
No, we have a life insurance policy.
Right, so maybe she is pacing back and forth, wondering if you're going to get home, but not really all that concerned about it one way or another. Back to the insurance thing with your dad again.
Yeah, exactly.
How much does she worry about you? I mean, she's a great character in the show, even though she's not in the show that much, because you can feel some of the heart that she has and some of the concern she has.
Oh,
for
yeah,
you.
no, she's a wonderful woman. She's the mother of my kids. And, she worries, right? Of course she does. We've been married 36 years, right? And, her only regrets, I think, are that she doesn't get to fish more because she loves fishing, especially tuna fishing, right? But, the truth is, without her bringing up the kids, doing the lion's share of the family rearing, I could never be a fisherman for a living, right? Let's face it, I can't pick up milk on the way home from work at 5 o'clock. I can't pick up the kids from school today because we're not going to be in those hours, right? And, what I did is I would try to make up for that because even the kids know fishing is fishing. When dad's fishing and fishing is good, he's gone. And he's going to be gone until fishing slows down. Then when it slows down, I would try and make up for it. I would try and do some dishes around the house. I would try and take all the kids and give them their own special time, as well as family events. But, I did the best I could.
You always made sure, too. I always remember him taking time off just to bring Nancy and the kids down to the Cape for a couple days, and you do the dad thing.
Yeah. Even when fishing was good,
even when fishing was good. But my cousins, which is Dave's kids, they know that if dad doesn't make any money, they don't have new stuff.
But it also means maybe dad's not at a little league game, dad's not at a basketball game, dad's not at a whatever the performance is.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for you, there's a level of, being a dad myself, there's got to be a level of guilt every time.
Well, yes and no, right? Because one of the reasons why earlier in my career, when I was a young fisherman, we would do 10-day trips, 12-day trips. On the bigger boats, on the longer trips, you made more money, right? Real simple. One thing I noticed, one thing I knew, I think I decided when I had the opportunity to finally buy my own boat. I had worked with enough old timers out there fishing who had regrets about, they're 65 and their son just turned 18 or their daughter just turned 19 or their daughter just graduated from college or high school and they missed it because they were on the boat. And I could see the genuine regret, right? So at least now, when I bought my own boat, I bought a small boat. Generally, it's a day boat. But now that I'm the boat owner, now when you're on a big boat, you go out there, the boat's got $30,000 invested in leaving the dock. The boat's not coming home till there's enough fish to pay for that 30 grand lay down. Plus everybody wants to make a check, so you need 60 grand worth of fish before the boat's coming back to the dock. That's the reality of offshore fishing. So you do miss all the birthdays. You do miss all the games. At least with my boat, I had some flexibility.
The other entity clearly worried about you guys, and I want to make sure we follow up here and get some real info, is the cat. The cat seemed very concerned that you weren't going to make it back. Now, I don't know how aware of the storm and the danger the cat...
The cat just wanted some fish.
Is that it?
The cat's name is Stormy.
I thought the cat's name was Cat. You seem like you were struggling a little bit with the name of the cat.
Well, I know. I think the girl's name is Stormy, but I just call it Cat. Look, cats are assholes. Let's face it, all right?
So why do you have a cat?
He was only there waiting because he was probably thinking, somebody's going to feed me, and I know this asshole with no hair usually does the job, so when's the asshole who's going to feed me come home?
If he knows you're going to feed him, why is he in the bathroom with you?
Well, that's where he feeds
Well, that's where
in the bathroom?
is, yeah.
You put his food in the bathroom?
Well, yeah, this litter box. Where else are we going to put it? In the kitchen?
I don't know. I don't have a cat.
Yeah. People ask. It was just funny. Again, and then the excellent editing pulls it all together, right? Everybody's waiting at me, right? And, they give the cat 10 seconds. But that had an impact. It always amazed me. The fans would go, oh, even the cat misses them. I don't think the cat missed me. I think the cat had to go out and was like, I ain't going out in that rain. Well, I'm going to go out and go piss.
You said you and .com became friends over the course of the show. Did the cat get to know was it Pickles or
no, I don't think
Reba
so.
or anybody else's dogs? You keep them separate.
No. We were acquaintances, all right? Let's not say I had the guy over my house, all right? Let's not get carried away.
All right. We won't go too deep into that. Another part we get here is Pirate. We get to see a lot of Pirate in this episode. How did he get his name? It's really hard to tell watching.
Well,
I don't
Arg,
know.
maybe. Maybe he just says arg a lot.
I mean, he's got the headband. He's got the teeth.
Did you see him? He had the cane, too.
Oh, dude, he's a full-on pirate.
Yeah.
He's a full-on legit pirate. He's on a boat with a guy you don't like. We've covered that kind of ad nauseum, but you like him.
Yeah, no, look, and again, I didn't know him, never met him before Wicked Tuna. And so we got to know him. Again, pirate, how can you not like pirate? You don't have to know him. Like, I think the fans all loved pirate, you know what I mean? Nobody ever said anything bad about pirate. He was great, what's not to like? And yes, I had some difficulties with his boss.
He would have fit perfect on our boat.
Yeah, I would have put him on our team in a New York minute if that kid needed a job.
Is he a typical character? Not that everyone's a pirate. I don't mean that, but are there a lot of characters like that around the fishing world?
Yeah.
Well, you just talked about the missing teeth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not just the missing teeth, but people who dress like a pirate.
Yeah, you saw Dave, right? He had the missing teeth.
How many other unique characters like a pirate do you know in this world?
I would say every fisherman is unique in its own way. You know, we all got to be crazy, you know?
No, the fishing industry is full of a bunch of characters. And it makes sense when you think about it, right? We're all a bunch of independents, right? None of us do well in a structured environment with a boss and telling us what to do, right? That's the nature of fishing, right? We're all independent boat owners because we don't play well with others, all right? We don't play well with a boss telling you what to do. Because let's face it, one thing I'll say about fishing, it's not a job you do if you hate, right? You go fishing because you love it. There's 1,000 easier ways to make money in this world, but you go fishing because you love it.
He has since passed, Pirate has, and I know we spent some time talking about your dad in an earlier episode and kind of thinking back, when you think back on Pirate, as you got to know him, I can't believe I'm saying those words aloud, but as you think back about him, what kind of comes to mind as you think about him passing?
Well, look, his real name was Kit Philly, right? But I think he loved that nickname, Pirate. But I do want to throw it out there that he had a real name too, and it was Kit. He was a good kid. And, you know, of course we miss him. I mean, I didn't see him a lot because he was down in the Cape and we were up here. But again, in the brief time I got to know him through working with him in what was known as Wicked Tuna, we learned to love that kid. He was a great kid. You know, he was harmless. And like Kit, Pirate, and I would talk on, via social media messaging. And, like we were friends on social media. And we would chit chat. And he knew his boss didn't like me and I didn't like his boss. But he would talk with me and my wife, Nancy. Nancy loved Pirate too.
Did he love his boss?
I don't know.
No, I couldn't really tell watching it. I didn't get the. I didn't get the sense he had the same kind of problem with him Dave does.
Well, I guess that's it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, he had he had to work with him. For the TV world, they were a great team. You know what I mean? Like for the brand that was Wicked Tuna, while they were on, they were a great addition to the show. As much as I hate them, I'll admit that. Especially because, like, Pirate was the anti-Ralph. You know what I mean? At least to me, you had this guy you despise and this guy you love, right? And maybe others saw that too. I don't know. But again, in spite of my dislike, I'll admit, for the brand, for Wicked Tuna, they were good for the show together.
Did you ever feel like you were leaning into your roles on the show? Whatever you saw your role as, Jay, did you feel like you had a specific role that you were playing on the show? Not that you were acting, I don't mean that, but that you would lean into some of what was expected of you?
You know, that comes down to like the first time we ever filmed, right? When Dave and I were catching a fish and it was just kind of game on, right? Now it's kind of explaining to the audience what's happening and stuff and just kind of over exaggerating what is really happening to make a good TV show.
Mm-hmm. Kind of you plus 15%.
Yeah, every fish isn't going to get lost into the boat, but when it's going straight down, it's going to get lost under the boat.
Right.
No, I definitely agree, though, over time, too. Once we understood what our roles were, you know what I mean?
How would you define your roles? How do you think the audience saw you
well,
on the show?
Okay, so,
We wanted people to watch us, so we just wanted to be more exciting.
Sure.
Right. Because, let's face it, like Jay getting excited when the fish was running and he would yell at the screamer. I think probably, I don't know, I would tell him to settle down before the show, right? Jay, calm down. It's just a fish. We're going to do this. But it became apparent early on that, Jay, because young, was genuinely excited when we hooked a fish. And what that translates into is, the audience gets excited because Jay's excited. So that's a plus. So, okay, we would encourage that. I would start yelling a little bit too in a positive fashion instead of I don't. But let's face it, I was always Captain Dave. He's the one ripping the butts, right? Swearing his head off, but making things happen though. Like, I'll even admit it. Like they, getting through editing. I think there's one episode that we see, right? And the boat breaks down again, right? Boat breaks down, shows me down there getting covered with grease. I go fix the engine. I close the engine hatch. I wipe my hands off the greasy rag. I light a cigarette, and then the rod bends and we catch a fish and go home, right? Now, even I'll admit, that made me look pretty cool, right? It was like, that guy's great, right? You got your whole thing and fix the engine. I can almost guarantee it didn't happen in that exact scenario. But again, it made it fun. It made it interesting. And most of all, I was impressed.
Sorry, we're surrounded by seagulls here in Gloucester. So if you hear the chirping, we don't have any fireworks with us because, we're on shore in Massachusetts.
Next time, Mike, I'll bring some.
All right, please do, to make sure that we can keep the seagulls at bay while we're
Oh, no, wait. Fireworks are legal in Massachusetts.
Right. We'll film up in New Hampshire next time to make sure that you can do that whenever you need to.
That's a solution.
No, I love the contrast between you guys on your boat. And I think it's one of the reasons it's so successful is you do get the youthful exuberance and excitement. It's a screamer. And then on the other hand, you get this grumpy guy who kind of a heart of gold.
You hear what he called you? Grumpy.
That's
I'm not the only one.
Well, people call me grumpy all the time. That's not an insult. That's just the facts. I love that interplay, and it seems like it served you guys very well.
And I think it does. That was part of our success as a team, and I think the boat's its own character. You know what I mean? Like I think people love that boat. They love that old crappy boat.
One of the things that we get in the rewatch with you guys of this episode is talking about what it was like having a camera crew on your boat. There's other people on there now, right? It's not just the two of you. You've got at least one more. You got a camera crew. They've got drone footage. They got all this other cool stuff going on your boat. How was that hard to get used to having that on the boat? Did it affect the way you fished at all?
It definitely was a learning curve because having this big camera in your face, you get a little. It's shocking, like, oh, what are you doing? Like, I just want to do my job. But then, a couple seasons down the line, it was just like talking to you, just it's not there. It's not existing.
Talking to me like I'm non-existent. I appreciate that. That's nice. That's how they think of me.
Well, just comfortable, you know?
Oh, good. Thank you.
So it was definitely a learning curve, but to make the show successful, we had to figure out how to learn,
Take a little while. I mean, how long do you think it took you to get used to having
They became part of the team too, right? Because now the mission was a little bit different than just me and Jay. When it was just me and Jay, the mission was to catch a fish, right? And catch a fish as economically and as best we could. Now you add in the camera, right? Another personality. Generally, those guys were on the boat for a few seasons. They would mix that up, though, rather than have a cameraman get familiar, right? So a different cameraman would get a different perspective. The cameraman became part of the team. Yeah. And it's funny because, we'd go out for a few days while we're filming the 6 or 8 weeks. We're filming this brand now that's Wicked Tuna. He'd be on the boat with us for 2-3 days at a time sometimes. He would take his turn cooking breakfast, all the stuff you didn't see on camera, right? Or he'd cook on the grill at night. Or he'd make sandwiches during the day. Again, just in general, part of the team, his job was to capture us fishing. That was his job. Jay and I's job didn't change much. And even if we're going to lose it, and he could help prevent that from happening, that's not his job, right? So we would have to watch us fail, even if he could help, right? But, that being said, it was they were always professional. There was always again, like Jay said, a learning curve. Because, again, I think they're underappreciated, those guys who actually filmed on the boats with us. Because here they are trying to capture something that, unlike, it's not like building a motorcycle where we can say, okay, guys, get your cameras ready. We're going to build the bike, and this is what we're going to do, and this is how it's going to happen, right? In this order, like this. That's not how fishing works. We can go, well, we think this is how it might go, and odds are it's going to go 180 degrees opposite than what we planned. And it's your job as the cameraman to be ready at any second to capture it all.
Seems like you guys learned a lot, and we've had the opportunity to learn quite a bit about these characters and who they are and what they were as they were on the show. Remember, you can watch all of this now on YouTube and the Wicked Tuna channel. It's great to get to catch up with you guys. Great to hear, where you're at in life these days and what you're doing and what it was like for you back in the day. So thank you to you both. This is another episode of Real Talk. Please go find the show. Go rewatch these now. It's all available on the Wicked Tuna channel on YouTube.